Evelyn Ward woke up because someone tapped on her car window. For one terrifying second, she forgot where she was. Then she saw the grocery store parking lot, the fogged windshield, the suitcase on the passenger seat, the wedding ring sitting in the ashtray like something dead. She was 65 years old, and after 38 years of marriage, this was the only room her ex-husband had left her. Not a bedroom, not a couch, a driver's seat. Warren had changed the locks the evening before. Quietly, legally, cleanly. Then he told the neighbors Evelyn was having trouble adjusting, as if sleeping in a car was just another mood a woman could grow out of. By sunrise, her hands were stiff from the cold, her coat smelled like gasoline, and she had one key left that still opened anything: Grandma Lottie's old family farm. Everyone called that place worthless. A rotting house. A leaning barn. Boxes of junk stacked to the ceiling, but Grandma refused to sell it for 40 years. And when Evelyn finally opened that farmhouse door, she discovered Grandma had not been saving junk. She had been saving people. So don't look away from Evelyn the way everyone else did. Subscribe and stay with her, because the first photograph she found had a name on the back and a message that made her knees go weak. But Evelyn did not find that photograph the moment she stepped inside. Not right away. The house made her earn it. Before the name on the back, before the message that would send her searching through a town that had forgotten its own people, Evelyn had to stand in the doorway of Grandma Lottie's farmhouse and face the one thing Warren had always used against her. The place he called worthless. The place her family laughed about. The place Grandma Lottie refused to explain. And now, the only place left where Evelyn could close a door behind her. She sat at the end of the gravel drive with both hands wrapped around the steering wheel, listening to the engine tick after she shut it off. Morning light spread slowly across the eastern Kentucky hills, brushing the weeds, the broken fence posts, and the old white farmhouse that looked even smaller than she remembered. It had aged badly. The porch sagged in the middle. One shutter hung crooked beside the front window. The paint had peeled into long, tired strips. Behind the house, the barn leaned toward the trees, as if it had been weathering one private defeat after another. Warren would have looked at it and smirked, not because it was falling apart, because he would have felt confirmed. He used to call it Lottie's paper graveyard. At family dinners, he joked that the place was full of dust, dead people, and things no sensible person would waste time saving. Evelyn remembered those jokes more clearly now because Grandma Lottie never argued back. She only kept eating and tightened her fingers around her fork. That was what stayed with Evelyn. Lottie never defended the farm. She simply never sold it. Not when buyers asked. Not when the cousins pushed. Not when people said the land was more trouble than it was worth. For 40 years, Grandma held on. Now Evelyn stepped out of the car with her suitcase in one hand and the old brass key in the other. The gravel shifted beneath her shoes. A truck moved somewhere on the county road, not close enough to stop, but close enough to make her lower her face by instinct. She still did not want to be seen. Not arriving like this. Not after sleeping in a parking lot. At the porch, her hand shook only once before she pushed the key into the lock. It stuck at first, then turned. The front door opened with a long wooden groan. A cool, stale breath moved out from the house. Dust. Cheddar. Old paper. Dampness from closed rooms and too many winters. Evelyn stepped inside and stopped. Boxes were everywhere. Along the hallway. Beneath the stairs. Beside the fireplace. Lined across the dining room wall. Some were soft cardboard with caved-in corners. Others were heavier, sealed and neatly marked in Grandma Lottie's careful blue handwriting. Old Mill Road. Church programs. County school records. Funeral cards. Unidentified faces. The labels meant almost nothing to Evelyn in that first moment. All she saw was labor, lifting, sorting, cleaning. One more mountain waiting for a woman who had come here with barely enough strength to stand upright. She had not come to rescue a house. She had come because she could not spend another night folded into a driver's seat. A floorboard creaked beneath her. Something small scratched once inside the wall, then went quiet. Evelyn pulled her suitcase down a narrow path between the boxes until she found the back bedroom. It was small and plain. Faded wallpaper. An iron bed frame without a mattress. One cedar chest beneath the window. Inside the chest were quilts, folded neatly, still holding the faint scent of lavender. Grandma Lottie's scent. Evelyn pressed one quilt against her chest and closed her eyes. For a second, the room felt less empty. Not safe exactly, not yet, but softer than the car, softer than the cold, soft enough for her to breathe. She spread the quilts over the floorboards. Then she noticed the box near the bedroom door. It was smaller than the others, cleaner, set apart, as if Grandma had meant to come back for it first. On the lid, written in blue ink, were 4 words: Bell family, not finished. Evelyn did not open the box. Not that morning. She stood over it with the quilt still pressed against her chest, reading the words again. Bell family, not finished. Grandma Lottie's handwriting was careful. Blue ink, firm letters, no hesitation. The kind of handwriting that made even a cardboard box feel entrusted with something important. But Evelyn stepped back. Her body still carried the cold from the car. Her knees ached from the drive. Her mind was too crowded with survival to take on a mystery. And underneath all of that was Warren's voice. Quiet, reasonable, deadly in the way it had always been. Don't start something you can't handle. So Evelyn left the box by the bedroom door. She told herself it could wait. But those words followed her into the kitchen. Not finished. That was how her own life felt. Like someone had stopped telling it halfway through. Then let another person write the ending. She found a chipped mug in the cabinet and rinsed it under the tap. The water ran brown for a few seconds, then cleared. She drank standing at the old counter where Grandma Lottie used to roll biscuit dough and sort photographs with flour still on her wrists. The memory came quietly. Evelyn at 12 years old, sitting at this same table, while Lottie spread old pictures in careful rows. Women outside churches, men beside coal trucks, children in school clothes, families standing in front of houses that were gone before Evelyn was born. Grandma never treated those faces like clutter. She touched each photograph by the edges. She said names out loud. Then she wrote them down. Evelyn loved that. The order of it. The care. The idea that a life could be held safely if somebody bothered to remember the details. For a while, she thought she might work at the county library in Pikeville, maybe the Historical Society, some quiet place where people came carrying old questions and left with names. Then Warren entered her life with pressed shirts, clean shoes, and answers for everything. He was not cruel at first. That was the dangerous part. He sounded certain. He knew which bank to use, which forms mattered, which bills should be paid first, which people were too much trouble. His control arrived, dressed as competence. At first, Evelyn mistook it for care. Then it became routine. Then it became the wall around her life. Warren kept the checkbook in the top drawer of his desk. He opened the mail before she saw it. He placed papers in front of her at the kitchen table and tapped the line where she needed to sign. "It's simpler this way," he would say. And Evelyn signed. Not because she was foolish, because trust, when repeated long enough, can become a blindfold. There was a library job once, part-time, 22 hours a week. Evelyn kept the notice folded in her purse for 6 days. On the 7th, Warren found it while looking for a receipt and laughed under his breath. Dead people don't pay bills. He did not forbid her. That would have been easier to fight. He only made her feel childish for wanting it. So she never applied. That was how he made her small. Not with one blow, with 1,000 quiet reductions. A dream postponed. A question swallowed. A bank statement unseen. A visit to Grandma Lottie skipped because Warren said the farm put strange ideas in her head. Now, at 65, Evelyn stood in the same kitchen with no house, no savings she fully understood, and a suitcase waiting in the back room like a guest she had not invited. For the first time, the thought came clean and sharp. Warren had not only taken her home, he had taught her to doubt her right to stand in one. The farmhouse creaked around her. Evelyn looked down the hall toward the box. Bell family not finished. This time, she noticed something she had missed before. A small paper corner tucked beneath the lid. Not a photograph. Not yet. A yellowed county library receipt, dated 3 weeks before Grandma Lottie died. The library receipt stayed in Evelyn's hand like a warning. Thin paper, faded ink, a date printed 3 weeks before Grandma Lottie died. Evelyn read the title twice, then a third time. Lost Families of Pike County. The words felt too close to her own life. Lost families. Lost houses. Lost women sitting in cars before sunrise, trying to remember when they stopped belonging anywhere. She looked down at the box near the bedroom door. Bell family not finished. Grandma had not been wandering through old papers for comfort. Not near the end. Not if she was still checking out books, still tracing names, still leaving receipts tucked under box lids like breadcrumbs. Evelyn almost opened it. Her fingers touched the cardboard. Then her phone buzzed. A calendar reminder flashed across the screen. County tax office. 10 a.m. The house seemed to grow colder around her. Before she could chase Grandma's mystery, Evelyn had to learn whether the farm was even safe to stand in. She folded the receipt and placed it in her purse beside the papers Warren had not managed to take from her. Then she drove into Pikeville with her coat buttoned wrong and her hair pinned back with two trembling hands. The county building looked plain. Brick walls. Clean glass. A flag shifting softly outside. Nothing about it looked threatening. But Evelyn had learned that some of the most frightening things in life came printed on white paper. Inside, she waited beneath fluorescent lights while other people handled their business quickly. Permits, titles, tax payments, forms they seemed to understand. When her turn came, the clerk was polite. Not warm, not cold, just official. That almost made it harder. She typed in the Ward farm address, paused, then printed several sheets. There were unpaid taxes, old estate notes, a missing signature. A deadline Evelyn had not known existed. None of it meant the farm would be taken tomorrow. But it meant the door Grandma left behind was not as secure as Evelyn needed it to be. The clerk explained payment arrangements and heir documents. Evelyn nodded as if every word made sense. But inside, shame pressed hard against her ribs. For years, Warren had opened the mail. Warren had kept the checkbook. Warren had said, "I'll handle it." And now Evelyn stood there, 65 years old, discovering that handled sometimes meant hidden. Outside, she sat in her car with the papers on her lap. For one exhausted second, she thought about leaving. The farm was leaking. The taxes were late. The boxes were endless. And the only person who might have explained any of it was buried on a hill behind Bethlehem Chapel. Then her phone rang. Warren. She did not answer. His voicemail came through a minute later. His voice was calm in that familiar way. The way he sounded when he wanted to seem reasonable to anyone who might overhear him. He said he'd heard she was camped out at Lottie's place. He said old houses could be dangerous. He said legal problems had a way of getting expensive. Then he paused, just long enough to make it feel personal. "Don't turn this into another mess, Evelyn." She stared through the windshield. Another mess. That was what he called her now. Not wife, not partner, not a woman he had left with nowhere to sleep. A mess. Evelyn deleted the voicemail, but not before the words settled somewhere deep. By the time she returned to the farm, the sky had dropped low over the hills. The first rain came before dark. Soft at first, then steady, then heavy enough to make the windows tremble. Evelyn placed a saucepan beneath one leak in the kitchen, then a mixing bowl beneath another in the hall. When she stepped into the dining room, she stopped. A dark stain was spreading across the ceiling. Directly above the boxes, one drop fell, then another. The cardboard lid of the smaller box began to darken at the corner. Bell family not finished. Evelyn moved before she thought. But when she lifted the box, the wet bottom sagged, and something inside slid loose. Something inside the box slid loose. Evelyn froze with both hands under the damp cardboard. For a second, all she heard was rain, hard on the roof, sharp against the windows, dripping through the ceiling as if the house had finally begun to give up. Then the bottom of the box sagged again. A corner split. Papers slipped through and scattered across the dining room floor. Evelyn caught what she could, but the rest fell in a soft, messy spill around her shoes. Photographs, folded church programs, a brittle funeral card, a strip of newspaper yellowed almost brown. For one tired moment, she wanted to leave it there. Let the rain have it. Let the house keep its secrets. Let Grandma Lottie's unfinished work stay unfinished. Because Evelyn was cold, hungry, behind on taxes, afraid of the dark, afraid of forms, afraid of Warren's voice still living somewhere in her head. And now even a cardboard box was falling apart in her hands. But then she saw the face. A small photograph had slid farther than the others, stopping beside the table leg. Evelyn bent slowly and picked it up by the edges. The picture showed a young black woman standing beneath a dogwood tree. She wore a pale dress with a narrow collar. Her hair was pinned back neatly. One hand rested against the side of her skirt, not posed exactly, but held still, as if the photographer had asked her not to move. Her face was serious, not sad, not smiling, just steady. There was something in her eyes that made Evelyn stop breathing for a moment. Dignity. That was the word. The kind no one could hand you. The kind no one could easily take. Evelyn turned the photograph over. On the back, in Grandma Lottie's blue ink, were 4 words. Clara Bell. Find family. The rain seemed to fade behind her. Evelyn read the words again. Find family. Not maybe. Not if possible. Not a question. On instruction. She looked down at the ruined box lid. Bell family not finished. Now it made sense. Not fully, but enough to make the room feel different. This was not a box of old paper. It was a promise Grandma Lottie had not completed. Evelyn gathered the scattered pieces and carried them to the kitchen table, away from the leak. She worked carefully, even though her hands trembled. A church program from Bethlehem Chapel. A school roster with several Bell children listed in pencil. A funeral card for a man named Amos Bell. A newspaper clipping about a road widening project from 1968. A handwritten note from Grandma Lottie. Ask Mrs. Calloway about Clara's daughter. May have moved north. Evelyn sat down. The chair creaked beneath her. Outside, rain poured off the porch roof in silver ropes. Inside, the old kitchen filled with names. Not famous names. Not wealthy names. Not people who had buildings named after them. Just names someone had cared enough to save. For the first time since arriving, Evelyn touched the papers not as clutter, but as evidence. Grandma had been searching for someone. Maybe many someones? And somehow, the family had walked past all of this for years and seen only junk. Evelyn thought of Warren laughing at the farm. Paper graveyard. Dust and dead people. No sensible person would save this. She looked again at Clara Bell's face. Then at Grandma's instruction. Find family. A strange feeling moved through Evelyn. Not confidence. Not yet. Something smaller. A pulse of responsibility. She had come to the farm because she had nowhere to go. But this woman in the photograph had been waiting here too. Waiting under dust. Waiting in a box marked unfinished. Waiting for someone to care enough to turn the picture over. Evelyn dried the photograph with the edge of a clean dish towel, careful not to press too hard. Then she placed it beside the yellowed library receipt. Lost Families of Pike County. The title no longer felt random. It felt like a door. Late that night, after the rain slowed, Evelyn found one more thing tucked beneath the school roster. A small envelope, sealed. On the front, Grandma Lottie had written only 3 words. For Clara's people. Evelyn did not open the envelope. Not yet. She set it beside Clara Bell's photograph and sat with both hands flat on the kitchen table, as if the wood beneath her palms could steady the room. For Clara's people. 3 words. Simple words. But they made the whole farmhouse feel less abandoned. Someone had been expected here. Not a buyer. Not a cousin looking for furniture. Not Warren, with his clean voice and cold opinions. Clara's people. Evelyn looked at the sealed envelope until the morning light thinned through the curtains. She wanted to know what was inside, but something in Grandma Lottie's handwriting stopped her. That envelope was not meant for Evelyn. It was meant to be delivered. So she wrapped Clara's photograph in a clean dish towel, slid the envelope into her purse, and drove into Pikeville with the library receipt tucked in the same pocket. The town looked ordinary that morning. A school bus sighed at the curb. A man in a ball cap carried coffee out of the gas station. 2 women stood outside the pharmacy, talking like nothing in the world had shifted overnight. Evelyn parked outside the county library and sat for a moment before going in. The building had changed since she was young. New windows, a wheelchair ramp, a blue sign by the door. But the feeling was the same. Quiet. Paper. People searching for things they could not always name. Inside, the librarian looked up from the front desk. Her name tag read, Mrs. Hensley. She had silver hair, sharp glasses, and the gentle caution of someone used to helping people who were embarrassed to ask. Evelyn almost turned back. Then she thought of the envelope. For Clara's people. She stepped forward and placed the photograph on the counter. Not the envelope. Not yet. Just the picture. Mrs. Hensley adjusted her glasses. At first, her face showed polite curiosity. Then, something changed. She leaned closer. "Where did you get this?" Evelyn explained only what she had to. Grandma Lottie's farm, a damaged box, Clara Bell's name on the back, a note to find family. Mrs. Hensley did not interrupt. She listened the way Grandma used to listen, as if small details mattered. Then she reached for a notepad and wrote down one name, Denise Bell Harper, a middle school history teacher. Locale. Still in Pike County. Family had roots going back before the mines changed half the hills. Mrs. Hensley said Denise had been asking about Bell family history for years, especially women whose records vanished between old church files and county ledgers. Evelyn felt the air tighten around that word. Vanished. The librarian made a call. Evelyn waited near the local history shelves, holding her purse with both hands. She looked at framed photographs on the wall. Coal camp families, school children lined in rows, a church picnic from 1951. Faces preserved because someone had thought to write names beneath them. She wondered how many others had no names left. 20 minutes later, Denise Bell Harper came through the library doors. She was in her late 40s, still wearing her school badge, her coat half-buttoned like she had left in a hurry. She greeted Mrs. Hensley first, then looked at Evelyn, kindly, carefully, not suspicious, but guarded. Evelyn unfolded the dish towel on a reading table. No one spoke for a few seconds. Denise stared at the photograph. Then she lowered herself slowly into the chair. Her fingers went to her mouth, but she did not cry loudly. She only breathed in once and held it. "That's Clara," she whispered. Evelyn stayed still. Denise touched the table beside the photograph, not the image itself. "My grandmother used to say Clara had eyes like she was looking past trouble. But we never had a picture, not one." The library seemed to go quiet around them. Denise leaned closer, reading the back. Clara Bell. Find family. Her face softened in a way that made Evelyn's chest ache. "All these years," Denise said quietly. "We knew her name. We just didn't know her face." That was when Evelyn understood. Grandma Lottie had not saved a photograph. She had saved a meeting, a moment meant to happen long after both women in the picture and behind the handwriting were gone. Evelyn reached into her purse and removed the sealed envelope. Denise saw the words on the front. "For Clara's people." This time, her hand trembled. She did not open it immediately. She looked at Evelyn instead, as if the question was too large for one room. "Mrs. Ward. Are there more boxes like this?" Evelyn thought of the hallway, the dining room, the labels, the walls of names waiting in dust, and for the first time since sleeping in that car, she felt afraid for a different reason, because the answer was yes, and she had no idea how many lives Grandma had left unfinished. Denise came to the farm the next afternoon. She did not come empty-handed. She brought cotton gloves from the library, a box of plain folders, a legal pad, and the kind of quiet seriousness people carry when they know they are stepping into something bigger than a favor. Evelyn watched her park beside the rusted mailbox. For a moment, embarrassment rose in her throat. The grass was too high. The porch boards were warped. One window had been patched with cardboard from the inside. This was not the kind of place a woman invited people into, not when she had been sleeping on quilts in the back room, not when half her life still sat in a suitcase by the wall. But Denise did not look at the peeling paint for long. She looked at the boxes, and the moment she stepped into the hallway, her face changed. Not with pity, with attention. That alone made Evelyn stand a little straighter. They started in the dining room, where Evelyn had moved the Bell box away from the leak. Denise opened her notebook and wrote the label carefully at the top of the page. Bell family not finished. Then they began sorting. Not quickly, not carelessly. One paper at a time. A church program from Bethlehem Chapel. A school list from 1949. A clipping about a road widening project. A handwritten note about Clara Bell's daughter possibly moving to Ohio. Denise read each item softly, as if speaking too loudly might disturb the dead. Evelyn listened, and slowly, something became clear. Grandma Lottie had not gathered these things randomly. There was a method. Under the dining room window sat boxes labeled by road names. Old Mill Road, Dry Creek Hollow, Laurel Branch, Harlan Turnpike. Near the fireplace were boxes labeled by churches: Bethlehem Chapel, New Hope Baptist, St. Agnes Mission, Mount Zion Colored Methodist. Along the hallway were family names: Bell, Harris, Mendoza, Grier, Calloway, Freeman. And in the parlor, stacked beneath an old quilt to keep dust off the lids, were boxes marked in a way that made Denise stop writing for a moment. Displaced families, unclaimed photographs, names misspelled in county records, children sent away. The house seemed to shift around them, not physically, but in meaning. What had looked like clutter became something else: a map, a rescue effort, a lifetime of trying to keep people from vanishing. Denise stood in the parlor doorway, holding one folder against her chest. "Mrs. Ward," she said quietly, then stopped herself. Evelyn looked at her. Denise swallowed. "This is an archive." The word hung in the room. Archive. Not Junk. Not mess. Not paper graveyard. Archive. Evelyn looked around at the boxes Warren had mocked. The boxes cousins wanted hauled away. The boxes Grandma Lottie had protected while people laughed behind her back. For the first time, Evelyn understood the size of the insult. They had not misunderstood Lottie. They had dismissed her because what she saved did not look valuable to them. No silver, no cash, no land deal, no furniture worth fighting over. Just records of people who had very little power to begin with. Denise opened another folder. Inside were copies of old baptism records, funeral cards, tenant lists, and photographs with question marks where names should have been. Some notes were written in Lottie's hand. Others were written by different people, shakier, older, sometimes barely legible. One note read, "My mother worked at the Hargis farm. Nobody spells her name right." Another said, "Please keep this. My boys won't care." Another, "Only picture we had before the fire." Evelyn sat down slowly, not from weakness, from the weight of it. People had brought Grandma Lottie their fragments, their proof, their last scraps of family memory. And Lottie had kept them, through storms, through unpaid bills, through relatives calling it nonsense, through Warren laughing at her table. Evelyn pressed one hand to the edge of the dining room chair and tried to steady her breathing. She thought of her own suitcase, how easily a life could be reduced, how quickly someone else could decide what mattered. Denise turned another page in Grandma's notebook and frowned. "What is it?" Evelyn asked. Denise laid the notebook flat between them. There, written in blue ink beneath a list of family names, was one sentence: "If the farm sells before this is sorted, they disappear again." Evelyn read it once, then again. The answer to 40 years of refusal sat there in plain handwriting. Grandma Lottie had never been stubborn about land. She had been guarding the only room left for people no one else had room for. Evelyn looked toward the hallway, where more boxes waited in shadow. Then Denise reached behind the notebook and pulled out a folded page Evelyn had not seen. At the top, Grandma had written, "Do not give the clearance man access to the parlor boxes." Evelyn felt the air leave her chest. Clearance man. Someone had tried to get inside before. The words on the folded page changed the room. "Do not give the clearance man access to the parlor boxes." Evelyn read them again, slower this time. Clearance man. Not buyer. Not neighbor. Not cousin. Clearance man. The phrase sounded ordinary enough to hide behind, like someone hired to empty a house after a funeral. Someone with a truck, a clipboard, and no reason to ask why a box of old photographs mattered. But Grandma Lottie had asked someone not to let him near the parlor boxes. That meant she had been afraid, not of the farm falling apart, of the records being removed. Denise looked toward the parlor, where the boxes sat beneath the old quilt, still waiting in shadow. "We need to know who that was," she said softly. Evelyn did not answer right away. Her eyes moved across the room, to the labels, the notebooks, the damp ceiling stain still drying above the dining room wall. For the first time, the farmhouse did not feel like a broken place she had crawled into. It felt like a place that had been holding its breath. The next few days changed the rhythm of Evelyn's life. Not quickly, not dramatically, but enough that she felt it. Denise came after school with folders and a small scanner borrowed from the library. Mrs. Hensley sent archival sleeves in a cardboard box with a handwritten note taped to the lid. A church deacon stopped by to check the worst leak in the dining room ceiling. He did not ask personal questions. He only looked up at the brown stain and said the roof needed patching before the next storm. That kindness almost undid Evelyn. Not because it was grand, because it was practical. No one was telling her she was foolish. No one was telling her she could not handle it. They were simply helping her handle it. Still, Evelyn remained careful. One family at a time. No originals leaving the house. No digging through boxes without someone present. Every name written down, exactly. Every unknown face marked unknown, not ignored. Those were her rules. She did not realize she had made them until Denise smiled and wrote them on the first page of a yellow legal pad. Ward Farm Records Handling Rules. Evelyn stared at the title. Ward Farm Records. Not Yunk. Not clutter. Records. The first visitor came on a Thursday. Mr. Alton Greer, 78, arrived in a brown pickup with one cracked taillight and a cap folded in his hands. He said Denise told him there might be Greer photographs from Dry Creek Hollow. He stood in the hallway like a man entering a church. Evelyn led him to the dining room table, where Denise had already placed 3 folders. For several minutes, nothing happened. Mr. Greer turned photographs carefully with one finger. Then he stopped. His whole face changed. The picture showed a boy standing beside a mule, barefoot, thin-shouldered, grinning like he had been caught doing something he was proud of. Mr. Greer touched the edge of the photograph. "That's my daddy," he whispered. No one spoke. The rain-damaged house seemed to go quiet around him. He said his father never liked being photographed. Said the family lost most of their pictures in a house fire in 1973. Said he had not seen his father young in more than 50 years. Evelyn watched him press his lips together and blink hard. And something inside her shifted. This was not about old paper. It was about giving people back what time had stolen. After Mr. Greer left, more calls came. A woman looking for her grandmother's church program. A retired nurse asking about a school picture from Laurel Branch. A man from Ohio whose mother had always said she was born in Pike County but never knew where. The farm began to appear in people's sentences. Quietly at first, then more often. By Saturday morning, 3 cars had come up the gravel drive. Evelyn felt exposed each time. The porch was still weak. The paint still peeled. Her suitcase still sat in the back bedroom. But people were no longer looking at the house the way Warren had looked at it. They were looking past the ruin, toward what Grandma had protected inside. That afternoon, Mrs. Hensley called from the library. Her voice was careful. Someone from the County Historical Society had heard about the records. They wanted to visit, maybe help, maybe assess the collection. Evelyn should have felt relieved. Instead, she looked toward the parlor boxes and thought of the folded warning. Do not give the clearance man access. Visibility could protect the farm, or it could bring back the people Grandma had tried to keep out. That evening, as the last visitor drove away, another car slowed near the rusted mailbox. It did not turn in. It only paused, long enough for Evelyn to see the driver raise a phone toward the house. Then the car moved on, leaving Evelyn standing on the porch, suddenly certain the farm was being watched. The car did not come back that night, but Evelyn still checked the window 3 times before bed. Once from the kitchen, once from the hallway, once from the back bedroom, where her suitcase still sat half open beside the wall. Each time, the road was empty. Still, the feeling remained. Someone had paused at the mailbox. Someone had lifted a phone. Someone had taken a picture of Grandma Lottie's farm as if the house had become evidence. By morning, Evelyn told herself not to be foolish. People were curious. That was all. A few cars on an old road did not mean danger. But before noon, Darlene called. Evelyn had not heard her cousin's voice in almost 8 months. Not when Warren changed the locks. Not when Evelyn slept in her car. Not when she drove out to the farm with nothing but a suitcase and a key. Now Darlene sounded concerned. Too concerned. She said she had heard people were coming and going at Lottie's place. She asked whether Evelyn was letting strangers inside. She asked whether the papers in the house belonged to the whole family. She said old documents could create liability if handled wrong. Liability. Evelyn knew that word. Warren had used it. The county office had used it. Now Darlene was using it too. The word sounded practical, but it carried a warning inside it. By 3 o'clock, Darlene arrived with 2 relatives Evelyn barely knew anymore. She stepped onto the porch in clean ankle boots, looked once at the sagging boards, and made a face she tried to hide. Evelyn saw it anyway. That small wince. The same look people gave when they believed poverty might rub off on them. Inside, Darlene did not ask where Evelyn had been sleeping. She did not ask if she had enough groceries. She did not ask what Warren had done. Her eyes went straight to the boxes. "So this is what all the fuss is about," she said. Not cruelly. That was the trick. Darlene spoke in the voice people use when they want control to sound like concern. She said the house was unsafe. She said the collection should be removed before moisture ruined it. She said the family needed to discuss what belonged to whom. Then she touched one of the parlor boxes. Evelyn moved before she thought. "Please don't." The room went quiet. Darlene looked at her hand, then at Evelyn. "It's family property." Evelyn's throat tightened, but she did not step back. "Those are people's records." Darlene gave a small laugh. Not loud enough to be ugly, just enough to make Evelyn feel unreasonable. "Evelyn, they're old papers." Old papers. The phrase passed through the room and landed badly. Evelyn thought of Clara Bell's photograph. Mr. Greer's face when he saw his father as a boy. Denise, holding the envelope with both hands. Grandma Lottie writing names because the world had not bothered. For years, Evelyn would have softened, apologized, moved aside to keep the peace. But something in her had changed. Not loudly. Not all at once. Just enough. "No originals leave this house," she said. Darlene's face hardened for half a second. Then it smoothed again. She mentioned a man who had once offered to clear the farmhouse after Lottie died. Said it as if it were a memory she barely cared about. A company from outside the county. Trucks, storage, disposal. Fast work. Evelyn felt Denise, standing near the dining room table. Go still. "What was his name?" Evelyn asked. Darlene shrugged. "I don't remember. Some estate clean-out man. He said the house needed emptying before it attracted problems." Problems. There it was again. A clean word for destroying things nobody wanted to explain. Before Darlene left, she warned Evelyn not to make decisions she could not undo. Then she stepped carefully over the weak porch board and drove away without looking back. The farmhouse felt different after that. Less like a shelter, more like a line someone had drawn. That evening, Warren called. Evelyn let it ring. Then came the voicemail. He said Darlene was worried. He said people were talking. He said Evelyn was embarrassing herself by playing museum in a falling-down house. Then his voice lowered. "You don't know what you're getting into." For once, Evelyn believed him. Not because he was right about her, because Grandma Lottie had left a warning. And now Darlene had given it a shape. An estate clean-out man. A house someone wanted emptied fast. Parlor boxes Grandma wanted protected. Evelyn walked to Grandma's old writing desk in the corner of the parlor. The drawers were swollen from age, and the brass handles had gone dull. She tried the top drawer. Stuck. The second. Empty. The third would not move at all. Then she noticed a small recipe tin sitting on the shelf above it. Inside, beneath yellowed recipe cards, was a key taped to the bottom. Evelyn peeled it loose. Her hand shook as she slid it into the locked drawer. This time, the drawer opened. The drawer opened with a dry scrape. For a moment, Evelyn did not reach inside. She only stood there, one hand on the brass handle, listening to the house. The parlor had gone still. Even Denise, standing behind her, seemed afraid to breathe too loudly. The drawer smelled of old wood, dust, and the faint sweetness of lavender sachets long gone dry. Inside were 3 neat bundles tied with cotton string. Grandma Lottie had not hidden much in her life. Not money, not jewelry, not secrets anyone thought profitable. But this drawer had been locked, and that meant something. Evelyn lifted the first bundle and untied it carefully. At the top was a handwritten inventory. Box numbers, family names, road names, church names, dates, cross-references, notes about missing photographs, uncertain spellings, disputed birth years, names changed after marriage, names lost after migration. It was not perfect, but it was deliberate. Page after page of Grandma Lottie trying to build order out of what the world had scattered. Denise leaned closer. "She cataloged it," she whispered. Evelyn nodded, but her eyes had already moved to the second bundle. Letters. Dozens of them, some written on lined notebook paper. some on church stationery, some on postcards with faded stamps. Many were addressed simply to Mrs. Lottie Ward. Evelyn opened one. A woman named Ruth Freeman thanked Lottie for keeping the only photograph of her mother before the fire. Another letter came from a man in Ohio who had been searching for his father's people and said Lottie was the first person in Pike County who had not made him feel like a nuisance. Another, written in a shaky hand, said, "Please, keep this safe. My children will throw it away." Evelyn had to stop reading, not because the letters were sad, because they were trusting. People had brought their last pieces to Grandma Lottie because they believed she would not treat them as trash, and Evelyn understood that kind of trust now, in a way she had not understood before. When a person has very little left, the thing they hand you may look small. A photograph, a funeral card, a spelling correction, a name whispered from memory. But sometimes that is the whole proof they were here. The third bundle was thinner, only a few papers. At the top was a draft agreement between Grandma Lottie and the county library. Evelyn recognized the library name from the receipt. Lottie had tried to create a formal place for the records. She had tried to make sure the farm's collection would not die with her, but the agreement had never been completed. One signature line was blank. A note in the margin read, "They said there is no budget for ordinary people." Evelyn stared at that sentence for a long time. No budget for ordinary people. That was what the world said in different ways. No room, no time, no record, no reason to remember. Then Denise touched the edge of the drawer. "There's another envelope." Evelyn looked down. At the very back, tucked behind the bundles, was a sealed envelope. The paper had yellowed, but the handwriting was clear. "For the one who comes back when she has nowhere else." Evelyn went cold. Not afraid. Seen. That was worse. She knew before she opened it that Grandma had meant her. Maybe not by name. Maybe not by certainty. But by understanding. Grandma Lottie had known the shape of a woman who might return with nothing but shame in her suitcase. Evelyn sat in the parlor chair before her legs could argue. Denise stepped back toward the doorway, giving her space. The envelope opened easily. Inside was one letter, written in Grandma Lottie's steady blue ink. Evelyn read slowly. Lottie wrote that people had laughed at the farm because they only saw what it lacked. New paint, good fencing, working fields, money. But they never saw what it held. She wrote that people came to her with pieces of their families because no office would keep them, no courthouse had room for them, and no one with authority believed poor people's memories needed protecting. She wrote that a town can erase a family without meaning to. Then it can call the silence history. Evelyn's fingers tightened on the page. The letter continued. Lottie wrote that she had refused to sell because any buyer would clear the house first. They would rent dumpsters, hire men, toss boxes, sweep rooms clean, call it progress, and by the time anyone realized what was gone, the people inside those boxes would be lost a second time. Then the letter turned, not to the town, to Evelyn. Grandma wrote that she had watched Evelyn grow quieter after marriage. She had noticed fewer visits, shorter phone calls, Warren answering questions meant for her, Evelyn smiling with her mouth while her eyes looked tired. She wrote that she had wanted to interfere, but old women are often dismissed when they name what everyone else would rather ignore. So she kept the farm, not because she knew the future, because she knew Evelyn's heart. "You always cared about the people others skipped over," the letter said. "If life ever sends you back here with nothing, do not believe you have become nothing. Sometimes the person who has been erased is the only one who knows how sacred a record can be." Evelyn covered her mouth. No sound came out. The letter ended with one final instruction. Do not let them turn this house into silence. For a long while, Evelyn sat without moving. Then she folded the letter with careful hands and placed it back on the table. By morning, she knew what she had to do. She would take Grandma Lottie's inventory to the library. Not to ask if the records mattered, to make them matter before someone else tried to make them disappear. By the time Evelyn walked into the Pike County Library the next morning, she was holding Grandma Lottie's inventory like it weighed more than paper. Her coat was still the same old coat. Her shoes still carried dust from the farm. Her hands still trembled a little when she opened the door. But something had changed. She was no longer coming in to ask whether the records mattered. She was coming in because she knew they did. Mrs. Hensley looked up from the front desk and saw Evelyn's face before she saw the folder. Denise arrived 20 minutes later, still wearing her school badge, her hair pulled back in a hurry. A man from the County Historical Society came after that. Then a woman from the courthouse records office. They gathered around a long reading table near the local history shelves. Evelyn placed Grandma's inventory in the center. Then she laid the letter beside it. Not the whole letter. Not the private part meant only for her. Just the pages explaining the collection, the family names, the church records, the unclaimed photographs, the children sent away, the misspelled names. The boxes Grandma had guarded because no one else had made room for them. At first, Evelyn let the others speak. They used careful words: collection, materials, possible significance, preservation concerns, historical value. Then one man said the papers would need to be evaluated before anyone could call them important. Evelyn looked at him, not sharply, not rudely, but clearly. "They are already important," she said. The room went quiet, and Evelyn heard her own voice, as if it belonged to a woman she had not met yet. She kept going. She told them about Clarabelle's photograph, about Denise seeing her great-grandmother's face for the first time, about Mr. Greer finding his father as a barefoot boy beside a mule, about the letters from people who begged Grandma Lottie to keep what their own families might throw away. Then Evelyn touched the inventory with 2 fingers. "These are not just old papers," she said. "They are the only place some of these people still have their names together." Nobody interrupted her after that. Not once. The work did not become easy. That would have been too simple. There were forms to file, shelving to find, leaks to stop, taxes to address, relatives to notify, preservation rules Evelyn had never heard of before. But this time, she was not alone. Mrs. Hensley arranged for the library scanner to be loaned twice a week. Denise brought students after school, not to touch fragile papers, but to help type names from copies. The Historical Society donated archival sleeves and acid-free folders. Bethlehem Chapel sent 2 men to patch the dining room ceiling before the next rain. The county did not erase the tax problem overnight, but they gave Evelyn time. A payment plan, a letter of support, a reason the farm could be treated as something more than a neglected property waiting to be cleared. And that reason had Grandma Lottie's name on it. Slowly, the farmhouse changed, not into something grand, not into a polished museum with marble floors and perfect lighting. It remained old. The porch still creaked in cold weather. The hallway still smelled faintly of cedar and dust. The paint still peeled in places where money had not yet reached. But the house no longer felt abandoned. The dining room became the first archive room. A folding table stood where boxes once leaned in danger of rainwater. Photographs rested in clean sleeves. Family folders sat in labeled bins. A small scanner hummed beside the window. A notebook lay open near the door for visitors to write names, corrections, and memories. Evelyn slept in a real bed now, a donated mattress on Grandma Lottie's old iron frame. The first night she lay down on it, she did not know what to do with the quiet. There was no steering wheel in front of her, no parking lot light pressing through a windshield, no fear of someone tapping on the glass. Just a roof above her, a quilt over her legs, and the low settling sounds of a house that had waited a long time to be useful again. People came by appointment, not crowds, not spectacly, just families. A retired nurse found a photograph of the one-room school her mother attended. A man from Lexington found his grandfather's name spelled correctly for the first time in any record he had seen. A woman brought a funeral program folded inside a Bible and cried when Evelyn showed her there were 3 more relatives listed in Grandma's notes. Each visit left something behind. A name corrected, a face identified, a story added. The house became less full of boxes and more full of voices. Warren drove past once. Evelyn saw his truck slow near the mailbox. For a moment, the old fear rose in her body before her mind could stop it. Then she looked behind her. At Denise, labeling folders. At Mrs. Hensley helping an older woman read a faded letter. At Clarabelle's photograph resting safely in a sleeve. Warren did not stop. Maybe he saw the cars. Maybe he saw the sign Denise's students had painted and placed near the porch. The Ward Farm Memory Room. Maybe he understood, Finally, that Evelyn was no longer standing where he had left her. Or maybe he understood nothing. Either way, it no longer decided her life. The small opening day came in late October, when the hills had turned copper and gold. There was no ribbon, no speeches too large for the place. Just neighbors walking up the gravel drive with paper bags of old photographs, church bulletins, family Bibles, and questions they had carried for years. Evelyn placed Grandma Lottie's portrait near the entrance. Beneath it was one sentence: "She kept what others threw away." Then Denise brought Clara Belle's family folder to the table. The photograph was no longer loose, no longer damp, no longer unfinished. Beside Clara's face were names, dates, church notes, and a copy of the envelope Grandma had marked for her people. Denise stood there with her hand over her heart. Evelyn did not say much. She only opened the visitor notebook to the first clean page. For a long moment, she held the pen above it. Then she wrote the words Grandma had spent 40 years proving. No one disappears here. Outside, the porch filled with soft footsteps. Inside, the old farmhouse held names the world had nearly lost. And Evelyn Ward, who had once slept in a car because one man decided she had no place left, stood at the doorway of a house where forgotten people finally had a place to return. That was the real comeback. Not sudden wealth, not revenge, not a man begging forgiveness. It was a woman finding her name again by protecting the names of others. And if this story made you feel that people like Evelyn deserve to be seen before they are pushed to the edge, please like this video and subscribe. Stories like hers matter most when we refuse to look away. And tell me in the comments, if you found a box of forgotten family records in an old house, would you protect them, search for the families, or leave the past alone?